Hi everyone, and welcome to Inside Archaeology. If you're new here, my name is Rachel, I'm an archaeologist, and like many other archaeologists, one of the things that inspired my love and interest in the past are the Tomb Raider video games. Lara Croft is arguably the second most well-known archaeologist in popular media, and her games have developed a strong fan following, including myself, over the past 30 years. That being said, I have to bring to your attention the fact that Lara is actually a terrible archaeologist by modern standards. I mean, the franchise name Tomb Raider should tip you off to that fact, but obviously, qualified tomb documenter and excavator for the purposes of research is not nearly as catchy a title or storyline. But I'm not here today to rip apart one of gaming's most well-loved characters. Instead, what I'm going to talk about is where the Tomb Raider games and real-life archaeology intersect. Are the sites Lara visits real places? Do they hold ancient treasures? What archaeological Easter eggs are hidden throughout the game? Those are the questions that I'll be digging into today as we look at the first entry into the series. Released in 1996, coincidentally, I've also just finished playing the remastered Tomb Raider 1 on live stream here on the channel. You can find all the streams of the different levels that I played just up here if you're interested. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel to learn more about real-life archaeology and its discoveries. Also, if you like this video, please take a moment to hit the like button or share it. If you want to take it further and actively support me and all that I'm doing here, all super thanks or Ko-fi donations, sales of our Redbubble merch, which is all designed by myself, go back into improving and promoting the channel. All right, everyone, let's dig in. We'll start with a quick summary of the game's plot, which begins when archaeologist adventurer Lara Croft is hired by Jacqueline Natla to acquire the Scion, a mysterious artifact buried in the tomb of Qualapec in the mountains of Peru. After recovering the Scion from the tomb, Lara realizes that she only has a piece of the artifact, and a rival treasure hunter has been sent after the rest. She discovers a medieval monk's diary and learns that the Scion is a powerful artifact, split into 3 pieces, which were divided between the 3 rulers of Atlantis. The next piece is buried alongside the former ruler Tihocan beneath an ancient monastery called St. Francis's Folly in Greece. After locating Tehoken's tomb and his Scion piece, Lara is shown a vision that reveals the third and final piece was hidden in Egypt after the third ruler, a traitor who used the artifact to create a breed of monsters, was captured and imprisoned by Tehoken and Qualapec. Making her way through Egypt, Lara recovers the third piece. She is then ambushed by Natla and her henchmen, who take the restored artifact. Lara escapes and stows away aboard Natla's yacht, which takes her to a volcanic island holding an Atlantean pyramid filled with monsters. After dispatching the henchmen and making her way through the pyramid, Lara finds the Scion and sees the rest of the vision. Surprise, surprise, Natla is the betrayer. Lara defeats Natla, destroys the Scion and the pyramid, and escapes the island, going on to have many, many more adventures after this. Everything I'm speaking about today are things that I noticed during my playthrough of the remastered game, and it turns out there are quite a few things that I missed or didn't have time to go into explicit detail about today. You can read more about the known references to archaeology throughout the game in the Tomb Raider Art Encyclopedia, which I've linked in the description and was very helpful for helping me put together today's video. Firstly, I'm going to point out that the entire backbone of the plot, Atlantis and the Scion, are entirely fictional things made up for the game. I'm sorry to say, I know it's disappointing, it would be cool if it was real, but Atlantis is a fictional island. It's first mentioned in the works of the Greek philosopher Plato 2,300 years ago as an allegory on the hubris or arrogance of nations. It is a thinly veiled reference to the First Persian Empire, which Athenians and Greeks historically are in lots of conflict with and don't like. There is no archaeological or historical evidence that an advanced semi-magical civilization like this or like what's shown in the game ever existed. Plato's work is the first time it was referenced in the historical record, and I want to emphasize that he was a philosopher, not a historian. So you need to read and interpret his work with that in mind. I could make an entire video on this topic alone, but for today, we're just going to leave it at that. Despite the fictional framing of the story, there are many elements of the game which incorporate real sites and artifacts. We'll cover them in the same order that they show up in the game, starting with the Peruvian levels of the caves, the city of Vilcabamba, the Lost Valley, and the tomb of Qualapec. Out of these four, only one, Vilcabamba, is a real place. Sorry to disappoint you, and honestly myself, but we've never come across a lost valley populated by living T-Rexes and velociraptors, although I am first in line to admit that that would be amazing and pretty cool. The caves that eventually lead you to Vilcabamba are located in a snowy mountain range with no identifying features. The city itself doesn't look like much of a city to me when we're running around it. There are no houses, just rooms that are inhabited by bears and wolves. In reality, Vilcabamba is often called the lost city of the Incas. Its name means sacred plain in Quechua, the Incan language. The real site is not up in the mountains, but is actually located around 1,400 meters above sea level in a lowland jungle near the northeastern slopes of the Andes. Getting to and from it was incredibly difficult in antiquity. It was most well known as the capital and last refuge of the Neo-Inca state, which lasted from 1539 to 1572 before falling to the Spanish conquistadors. Subsequently, it was abandoned and its location forgotten by the West, although it's worth noting that plenty of local people knew of the existence of the site, although perhaps not its connection to the Incans. In 1911, an American explorer mistakenly identified Machu Picchu as Vilcabamba, which is where the misconception that Machu Picchu was an Incan fortress sanctuary instead of a palatial vacation resort for the Sapa Inca comes from. In 1964, Jean Savoy identified the real site, and since then, the jungle has been cut back, and archaeologists have found the remains of temples, canals, platforms, buildings, and terraces spread across 12 hectares. In 2010, items belonging to the pre-Incan Wari culture were found there and radiocarbon dated to around 700 CE. This indicates that the site was occupied long before it became the Incan capital in 1539. You can visit the site today as a tourist, although it is quite remote and it can be quite a bit of a trek to get there. Throughout the Peruvian levels, those same colossal sculptures appear repeatedly, most noticeably in the tomb of Qualapec. These sculptures are based on the misnamed Atlantean pillars from the site of Tula in Mexico, which is long thought to be the capital of the Toltec people. The Toltecs were a pre-Columbian culture that peaked from around 950 to 1150 CE. The later Aztecs considered the Toltec to be their intellectual and cultural predecessors and described the Toltec culture as the epitome of civilization. The real-life pillars are four anthropomorphic statues that can be found in Tula's Temple of the Lord of the Dawn. They are over 4.6 meters tall and are hand-carved from limestone, sandstone, and volcanic rock. They depict Toltec warriors wearing stylized butterfly breastplates, sun-shaped shields on their backs, feathered headdresses, and carry spear throwers and a supply of spears. The exact dates for the pillars is unknown, but rough estimates can be made by dating the site. The construction of the Toltec Empire has been dated to around 750 CE, so this is the earliest time that the figures could have been carved. Certainly, they are not Atlantean, and in the game's context, it doesn't really make sense how they got all the way from Mexico to Peru. The puzzle section of Qualapec's tomb utilizes another pre-Columbian motif, a chimu bird carving. It seems that the game motif was based on a series of friezes that adorn the walls of a citadel at the Chan Chan archaeological site in northern Peru. Chan Chan was the capital of the kingdom of Timor, which arose around 900 CE and was later conquered by the Inca. To modern eyes, this motif resembles a chicken, or at least that's what it looks like to me. However, chickens wouldn't have come over to the Americas until after the peak of the Timor culture. The Timor had a thriving coastal economy for fishing, so it's more probable that this represents a seabird like a pelican. Next, Lara ventures to Greece, where she visits the St. Francis's Folly Monastery, a colosseum, the Palace of Midas, a cistern, and the Tomb of Tehokan. These levels are a mishmash of Greek and Roman archaeological remains or places. The monastery isn't real and certainly doesn't match any religious building I've ever been inside, especially since it's occupied by lions and gorillas, who are very out of their geographic element. The game Colosseum is entirely fictional. There is only one Colosseum in the world, and it is located pretty predominantly in the middle of Rome. What we call the Colosseum is actually a nickname coined to refer to the amphitheater near a colossal bronze statue of the Emperor Nero. Ancient Roman amphitheaters were oval or circular in plan, not rectangular as shown in the game, with seating tiers that surrounded the central performance area, very similar to a modern open-air stadium. Their earlier predecessors were ancient Greek theaters that were typically built on hillsides and were semicircular in design. Around 230 Roman amphitheaters have been found across the area of the Roman Empire, including in Greece, but none are attached to a monastery or underground. Next, we have the Palace of Midas, a fictional place based on the Greek myth of King Midas, who ruled Phrygia in central Anatolia, modern Turkey, but incorporating visual elements of the Minoan Palace of Knossos in Crete, most notably the dolphin frescoes, which date to the 15th and 16th centuries BCE, and which are an example of the marine style of Minoan art. Modern visitors to Knossos will find a replica of the fresco displayed over a doorway in the east wing of the palace. The original fresco is now housed in the Heraclean Archaeological Museum, but it is actually a reconstruction made by an artist and architect, Piet de Jong, based on a few fragments of painted plaster. It's quite possible that he may have taken some artistic license when he reconstructed this and other Knossos frescoes. There is also debate as to where the original fresco would have been located in the palace, although none of these theories think that it was in a pool. Hopefully, you've heard the story of King Midas and the Golden Touch, alluded to in the game via the hand you can stand on, which then turns you into a gold statue. There are many and often contradictory legends about Midas. Perhaps he is based on a real person, but at the moment there is no archaeological evidence to support this. There was, however, a King Midas who ruled Phrygia in the late 8th century BCE up until the sacking of Gordian by the Cimmerians. He is known from Greek and Assyrian historical sources, but there is no connection between him and the legendary King Midas. The cistern level is clearly based on the real underground structures that were designed for catching and storing water and used throughout antiquity. Numerous examples of them can be found throughout the ancient world. Perhaps the most famous is the Basilica Cistern in Istanbul, which I actually had the opportunity to visit in 2023. It is the largest of several hundred ancient cisterns that lie beneath the city and was built in the 6th century during the reign of the Byzantine Emperor Justinian I. It was called the Basilica Cistern because it was located under a large public square called the Stoa Basilica. The majority of the columns in the cistern appear to have been recycled from the ruins of older buildings, likely brought to Constantinople from various parts of the empire. They are carved out of different types of marble and granite. This cistern provided a water filtration system for the Great Palace of Constantinople and continued to provide water to the Topkapi Palace after the Ottoman conquest and into modern times. However, its existence was eventually forgotten by all but the locals, a common theme, who still drew water from it until 1565, when a French traveler recorded being rowed in between the columns and seeing fish swimming in the water beneath the boat. In modern day, the cistern has been drained, so the water is only a few feet or few meters deep. You can go down inside it and walk along a raised platform throughout the entire thing among the columns, which often have displays of modern art installed in between them, and also a pretty cool light show that's like constantly on display. Like the light is constantly changing color. Next, we go to the Tomb of Tehokan, which is once again fictional. Near the end, it features vivid red walls and some blocks with Greek writing on them, although, as far as I could tell, they don't say anything particularly significant. Then we head to Egypt, which has 3 levels: the city of Khamun, the obelisk of Khamun, and the sanctuary of the Scion. Khamun is not a real place, and it's not even an Egyptian name. The developers have said that this level title is derived from the name of King Tutankhamun. Upon entering the level, you come across a lovely monumental Sphinx statue, which is clearly based on the Great Sphinx from Giza. Sphinx is a Greek name that we have given to this type of Egyptian statue. We actually don't know the original Egyptian term for them, but we know that they symbolize the holding back of the forces of evil and were a very popular statue type throughout the history of Egypt. The Giza Sphinx is the most well-known, but not only example of this statue type, as many pharaohs had their heads carved atop these guardians for their tombs. Great avenues of sphinxes line the approaches to tombs and temples, like the famous 900 ram-headed sphinxes that connect the temples of Luxor and Karnak. Probably my favorite artifact in this level and game is the cat statue, a copy of the Geyer Anderson cat statue, which currently lives in the British Museum. In real life, it is a bronze figurine depicting the goddess Bastet, which dates to the late period around 600 BCE. The real sculpture wears a silver protective pectoral, golden earrings, and a nose ring. Scattered throughout the next level, the obelisk of Khamun, are several examples of Egyptian furniture. One I noticed in particular was clearly based on the chair of Queen Hetepheres. Her tomb was found near her son's in 1925 and contained a trove of richly decorated bedroom furniture and grave goods, a truly spectacular find. A combination of plant and animal motifs can be found on this wooden, gold gilded chair with armrests that are decorated with bound papyrus plants. Also featured is a Senet board that I read is based on the one found in King Tut's tomb. Senet is an Egyptian board game of both strategy and luck, played by two people who maneuvered their pieces according to the throws of sticks or bones. It symbolized the passing from life through the netherworld into the afterlife, with the game board representing a physical bridge connecting the space of the deceased to the space of the living. Within the obelisk level, you are also tasked with gathering 4 items: an Eye of Horus, an Ankh, a Seal of Anubis, and a Scarab. The Eye of Horus, also known as a wadjet, is a very popular symbol in ancient Egyptian religion that represents well-being, healing, and protection. It was believed to have protective magical powers and appeared very frequently in Egyptian artwork. It was one of the most common motifs for amulets, remaining in use from the Old Kingdom all the way to the Roman period. Similarly, the Ankh, or Key of Life, is a hieroglyphic symbol used to represent the word for life and by extension became a symbol of life itself. Early examples of the sign date to the First Dynasty. However, there is little agreement on what physical object it originally represented. Many scholars believe that it is a knot formed of a flexible material such as cloth or reeds. The Ankh artifact in the game is based upon an amulet found in Nubia, which dates to between 700 and 500 BCE. Superimposed on the front are the god He with 2 tadpoles, which represent 1,000,000 years, a Jed pillar, which represents stability, and a wasp scepter representing power. The real artifact is now in the British Museum, although it's not on display. The game's Seal of Anubis is based on the clay seal that was found on the door of King Tut's 5th shrine, one of the nested, gilded boxes around his sarcophagus in his tomb. Anubis is the ancient Egyptian god of funerary rites, the protector of graves, and a guide to the underworld. The real seal bears the symbol of Anubis and 9 bound captives. The last level artifact, the Scarab, is not based on any particular item as far as I could tell. Scarabs were popular amulets and impression seals in ancient Egypt and were depictions of the dung beetle that was associated with the divine manifestation of the early morning sun. Lastly, we can't leave out the obelisk that is the namesake of this level. Obelisks are tall, 4-sided, narrow, tapering monuments which end in a pyramid-like shape at the top, which the game version lacks. You can jump on top of it. The Egyptians called them tekhenu. Surprise, surprise, obelisk comes from the Greek term obeliskos. Egyptian obelisks are monolithic and were made of a single piece of stone. They symbolize the sun god Ra and were often placed in pairs at the entrances of temples. The game version doesn't seem to be based on a real obelisk as far as I could tell, but there are many examples of existing ones that you can find all over the world. Khamun is the last archaeologically rich level in the game. The Sanctuary of the Scion contains a single reference. The Scion artifact rests atop a block decorated with the Egyptian Sema symbol, which means to unite. This symbol is most famously found on the throne of the statue of King Khafra, builder of the second biggest pyramid at Giza. The next levels of Natla's mines and Atlantis have no obvious historical connections besides being based on the Atlantis myth. The only thing the game's Great Pyramid shares with the real-life Great Pyramid is its name, basically. The Great Pyramid's actual name, as in what the Egyptians called it, was Khufu's Horizon. The real Great Pyramid is not built underground or above active volcano and lava flows. It sits on solid limestone bedrock. That's the only thing that could really handle the weight of it. You can learn more about the real-life monument in my video on the construction of the Great Pyramid, which was filmed as I built the Lego example, which is just in the corner that you see here. You can find that video just up here. All right, everyone, time to hang up Lara's pistols for today. Did you like this video? Is there anything important that I missed? Which archaeological Easter egg was your favorite? Don't forget to share, comment, like the video, or subscribe to the channel before you leave. To further support Inside Archaeology, you can give a super thanks, Ko-fi donation, or buy some merch from my Redbubble shop. Taking a few seconds to support me in any way you can helps grow the channel and promotes quality heritage content that is well-sourced, researched, and presented by someone who is an expert in this subject. It shows the algorithm that people are interested in real archaeology. Thank you so much for watching. Stay curious, and I hope to see you on my next adventure into the world of archaeology.